This is the bandsaw that my boss gave me. He had had it sitting around in his barn for a few years. The other day I was looking through a catalog and I saw this little bandsaw that's about the same size as mine, and I really like that hydraulic cylinder. I wonder if I could modify my bandsaw so it could use a hydraulic cylinder. I'm tired of playing with that spring just to get a reasonable cut. Now I do have a pneumatic cylinder. I wonder if I could modify it to work with hydraulics. But first, I gotta figure out where and how to mount it. There's a bolt there, make a nice little pivot point, and these slots, or notches, I guess I should say. Maybe I could use them for the rod end of the cylinder, but I gotta make them out. So I cut these out on the water jet at work. Let's weld them together. First a few tacks, hold the top and back, then the gussets. Let's weld it all together, and then test fit it on the cylinder. That looks pretty good. Now I mounted the cylinder to the bandsaw. Looking good so far. Got plenty of travel on the cylinder. How do I use these notches to mount the rod end? I can clamp a bolt on the notch, and I can make a nut that'll screw to the end of the rod. I'll need another nut that fits the bolt, a spacer that fits over the rod, and of course the nut that screws to the rod. They stack pretty nicely, and I can weld them together. After a few test fits, I decided I needed to turn the cylinder mount around and find the best location that allows me to use the full travel of the cylinder. Now all I gotta do is figure out the hydraulics. I had a few pieces of copper tubing and cobbled together some fittings and even a little valve of sorts. Okay, this is just so you can see how it looks like with my first attempt. I was using fittings that I had already had, and a little, not a needle valve, but an ice maker kit valve. I will put a needle valve on it. This is just more or less a proof of concept. Anywho, it does open wide quickly, so I've got to be real careful on how far I'll turn it. Once I get the real needle valve in, it'll be much more controllable. But as a hydraulic damper, descent controller, whatever you want to call it, I think it works.